Hello Internet, and welcome to my patch notes review for Smite patch 3.8, the Perfect Storm. So I'm just going to be talking about, these are basically just my thoughts on the changes and whatnot. So, new god, Susanoo, pretty cool, very fast-paced kit. He moves faster when his abilities are on cooldown. His first ability is like a 3 parts, like 2 quick attacks, although you can basic attack in between, so if you're really good at like auto attack canceling or something, you can do that. Hydra's Lament works really well with it. And then the third part is just the dash, doesn't do any damage on the dash portions. Cool ability, quick damage, very high damage. Second ability is kind of like Scorpio from Mortal Kombat, I think that's his character. You know, the guy's like, get over here! He basically just like in a cone in front of him, he pulls people towards him. The ability does barely any damage. The targeter is just like Nemesis, and the damage is just like Nemesis. Kappa Kappa. So yeah, very low damage, as you can see, 120 plus 25% power. So it's very low damage. It's just basically a fairly medium range pull towards you. His 3 is kind of like Sacred Monkey from Hun Bats. He throws it forward. If it hits an enemy, he'll stay on that enemy and deal damage over 3 seconds, and if he reactivates it, he can teleport to them. If he misses an enemy, it'll just stop at max distance, and then he can still teleport to that spot. Hang on, I'm going to mute Discord real quick, just in case someone talks. Alright, his ultimate is kind of like, it's a 2-parter. First, there is basically a Poseidon Whirlpool that does no damage, and then there's a giant tornado that functions similar to a Kukulkan ult. So after 2 seconds, or you can cancel it early for a smaller width, a tornado will fly out of the whirlpool type thing, and it'll go in the direction that Susanoo is facing, and deal damage and knock up enemies. So great team fight ult. His kit's like designed to like get in and out real quick. He's good at chasing enemies down, and he's got a good team fight ult. It's very fun, fast-paced character. Tomorrow I will have I'll try and get some gameplay on the PTS. You know, this won't just be like the last times I said I was going to get gameplay, because those times I had technical issues. First, PTS wouldn't update, and then my gems didn't carry over from my live account to the PTS account, so I couldn't actually show off the skins and stuff I wanted to show off. So yeah, I'll try and get some gameplay of them. If my PTS client updates, then I will get some gameplay of Susanoo. There's some new skins. Vicious Apollo, it's pretty cool. It's just kind of a punk rock Apollo. It's a very neat skin. There's like a power chord sound effects and stuff when you use it. Like there's just like a down, down. That's really bad. I'm just never gonna make sound effects again. But he's got these like these guitar sound effects when he uses his abilities. When he's in his ult, there's just like this constant riff going. It's very cool. Giannis has this kind of cross between Giannis and Geb skin. Pretty cool. He's got this kind of like earthy stuff. Is like gnarled like rocks and moss on him. It's a cool skin. Loki has these Joker skins. The second one is just a recolor of the first one, and it's only available for a limited time. Jag.rar Shibalanke, best pun in the patch. Very, very cool skin. Just like the Run.exe skin, you know, it's got like a Tron theme. The like neon colored bits change color gradually, and that affects the color of the abilities, etc. Very cool skin. Nemesis gets a tier 2 skin. Normally I don't talk much about tier 2 skins, but this skin is actually really dope. The card art doesn't even begin to describe it. The sword looks fucking unreal. And then Raijin gets mastery skins, and there is an Allied Strong avatar that's available with the code #AlliedStrong. Next up, there's some layout changes and stuff to the Conquest jungle. So first and foremost, speed buff is back. I'm personally not a fan of speed buff because it affects your in-combat speed, and losing speed buff isn't just like, you know, losing a camp or something. It's not like, oh, I just lost some farm. If you miss out on that speed buff, you miss out on pressure all over the map. Additionally, I don't like that it increases speed in combat. I don't like that it makes it easier for someone to chase someone down, that it makes it easier for someone to run away from combat, or that it makes someone like Kali able to just glue to you that much easier. I would prefer, if they want people to have the option to, rotate fast, make quicker rotations as a jungler and stuff, I would prefer if they just buff Talaria boots to not have basically zero power. I'd prefer if Talaria boots had like 25, 30 power, so that you can actually buy them and still have an impact, just not quite as much as if you had Warrior Tabi. But you make up for that by being able to rotate faster, restore a bit more health out of combat, and generate a bit more gold from rotating. And I think that'd be a cool change to have. But moving on from that, so because of the speed buff is back where it used to be, so that means mana buff is back on the solo lane side where the boars were. Solo lane doesn't have boars anymore. So that should mean, at least in the early game, until the solo laner can actually clear the buff camp by themselves safely, that should mean that's less farm that solo laners are getting by themselves. So it's a little bit more farm for the jungler to share with the solo laner, so it's less time they're sharing with other people. It should help make solo laners not quite as far ahead as everybody else, so that's pretty cool. Back harpies are spawning further away from the buff camp, so that means ADCs and solo laners are going to have less easy access to the back harpies. The back harpies are also respawning more frequently. The boar on the duo lane side, or the boars on the duo lane side, respawn at the same interval as buffs, so they respawn slower than they currently do. But they reward more XP and gold. So I think this is primarily just so that, because there's not going to be the double clear where you clear the XP camp and the red buff at the same time, I think this is just to make it so you still get to lane at about level 2. Could be wrong in that, but I think that's the intent there, or the goal, or the impact at least. Fire elementals are a little bit higher. They give, I think, about 50% more XP and gold, but they stop spawning once the fire giant spawns. And yeah, that's basically the jungle changes. So some interesting changes. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of speed buff personally, but I do like the layout changes, especially moving the XP camps further away from the buff camps, so you actually have to go more out of your way to get it, so it's not just something that it's less likely for the ADC and solo laner to be going for that without giving up some like lane pressure or something of that nature. And them respawning quickly means there's gonna be more opportunities to get them after like returning to base or something, or just for something to do other than sitting around in mid with your thumb up your ass, right? Do these changes fix the big problem of junglers basically just being mid supports? I don't think so, because Smite gold sharing still works the same way. It's still more, if there's 4 sources of farm and there's 2 people, it's still more optimal for those 2 people to go share all 4 than for 2 of them to do 2 each by themselves, right? That's just a fundamental way of how Smite works. So, and mid camps are still spawning at like 5 seconds, so the jungler needs to be in mid to help contest mid camps and confirm some of that XP and gold for the mid laner. So they're still gonna go to mid camps right after the buffs, clear mid wave in between because they're both there, then go both do back camps, then go back to mid, then do back camps, then after that, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But there's still like, I guess the speed buff helps to open up the opportunity to rotate in a little bit quicker to make a impactful rotation to the duo lane or something right there early on. But this is still, realistically, junglers are probably still going to be mid support, basically, at least for the early game. We'll see how it affects things as things go on. I don't really know the impact yet of the shorter timers on the harpies, but we'll see how that plays out. But for now, it looks like junglers are still going to spend most of their time in mid lane. Item changes. Blood Forge seems a very interesting change. Rather than being a dumbed down version or a gimped version or whatever you want to call it of Devourer's Gauntlet, is now its very own item. So it's much more expensive, 600 gold more expensive. Has 75 power, up from the 40 to 55 it had before. Still has 15% lifesteal. And the new passive on it is when you kill an enemy god, you get an absorption shield that shields you for 200 plus 10 per level, so up to 400 health at level 20. And you gain 20% movement speed during this. So it's an interesting item. I don't see it really breaking the game or being picked up all the damn time, because 75 power sounds like a lot, but with power and basically nothing else on the item, like no pen, no CDR or attack speed or anything like that. It's power only goes so far. Like, just as an example, on Thor does more damage with Brawler's Beat Stick than he does with Transcendence, right? Like, penetration goes a long way. Power on its own doesn't go quite as far. So, the item isn't like crazy overpowered, especially given its price. The passive is very interesting. It's a very strong passive, but keep in mind you're going to have to give something up to get this. Like, if you're someone like Kali, you'd have to be giving up your oboe or your stone cutting sword. If you're Thor, you'll be giving up, a penetration item or a defense item or something. Some sort of item that really helps you stick and either do a lot more damage or survive in fights. So I don't see this item being like some must-have item that's basically breaking the game, but it is an interesting item. Then there's some minor item changes here. Gem of ISO is a little bit cheaper. Heartward Amulet has 5 more protection. Tooltip and bug fix errors. Rod of Asclepius, slightly better. 250 health up from 200. 25% healing up from 20%. Not a huge change. Also, I don't think this item particularly needs a huge change. It's not so much that this item is bad. I think it's a great item if you're a healer, right? Like, you get some health, you get some movement speed, you increase your healing a lot, and you get 70 power. It's a good item. The problem with this item... Actually, sorry, the problem is... there is no problem with this item, in my opinion. The problem is just that healers in general right now are not really favored, right? Because there's anti-heal is so easy to get and so impactful, so it's really easy to shut down healers right now, so no one's really using healers. It's not so much that this one item is bad, it's that healers don't really have a very comfortable place. The Tier 2 version of Rod of Asclepius, Rod of Healing, now actually has something to do with healing, so the name makes sense now since it has a 10% healing boost. Runic Shield has a price drop. Okay, I don't think it's necessary. I think it was already a great item, but whatever. Spectral Armor has a little visual effect for when it activates. Cool. Stone of Gaia has 5 more MP5. Still a shit item. Like, why would you buy Stone of Gaia or Gauntlet of Thebes when you can get Winged Blade for cheaper, which gives almost as much health, but also gives movement speed, crowd control reduction, immunity to slows, or when you can get Magi's Blessing, which gives you the same amount of health and a little bit of protection for physical and magical, and gives you beads every 75 seconds. Like, this tree just kind of sucks, except maybe for Mail Renewal since it has CDR on it. Wind Demon is no longer an anti-heal item. This is actually a really interesting change. So now Wind Demon gives attack speed and movement speed. So Mercury fucking partying, right? But Wind Demon, now I can see this making crit builds much more viable on Hunters and even possibly bringing triple crit back. One of the big problems with Hunter builds in Season 3 was because of the change to Executioner, where it no longer provides flat penetration, meant the Executioner is no longer effective against squishy targets, right? It's still good against tanky targets, but the impact it makes on squishy targets is much smaller. So people are just getting Titan's Bane as their penetration item now, right? With Wind, the problem with getting Titan's Bane as your penetration item is you're losing out on a lot of attack speed compared to the Executioner. So now with Wind Demon, you can build crit and get attack speed from that. So you could get like Wind Demon, Aussie, and Ninja Tabi could be all the attack speed that you need, right? Or just Ikvol and Wind Demon, that's all the attack speed you need. So this really makes your builds a lot more flexible. It's gonna be really interesting to see this item play. I can see this being a very popular item and even potentially making Rage basically never purchased, because this is only 200 gold more than Rage, and rather than getting the on average, like I think Rage equals out by itself, it averages out to like 35% crit chance, but then as soon as you buy a second crit item, its passive becomes practically non-existent in Rage. Plus Deathbringer, for example, averages like 45% crit chance, so it's like the passive on Rage becomes increasingly obsolete the more crit items you have. But this is just going to be this is a really, really good passive, and the movement speed on it combined with Fatalis could be pretty hilarious. You're going to be moving around super fast, just critting someone for days. Witchblade, much like Runic Shield, has cost reduced a little bit. Cool. Artemis. Transgressor's Fate, now it has a different visual effect to enemies. it looks like it's basically just like a little red glowing circle on the ground. I don't think this is a necessary change. I guess it's just for consistency across all the skins, because some skins you can see traps really easily, others they're borderline impossible. So for the sake of consistency, it's good, but I don't think Artemis traps need to be visible. I mean, they're already like basically the most difficult to confirm CC in the entire game, since she has to place it super close to her. It triggers an animation where she can't auto tackle while she places it, which is fine. I'm not saying that's like underpowered or anything. I'm just explaining. It has a delay and a small radius, so like even if you're like right behind someone, you put it right under them, it's not going to activate on them. Even if you put it slightly ahead of them, it's not going to activate on them, because by the time it's ready to activate, they've moved out of it, that radius. So really this trap doesn't really get used except when you combo it with your ultimate first, or if someone gets Kumba ulted, or if you use it against like a ROM. So yeah, I think the trap could stand to just straight up be invisible to enemies. Maybe after a period of like 3 seconds, maybe it starts out super visible and then turns invisible. So you have to like really pay attention to where they place it and go out of your way to burn them, or tell your team where they are, etc. But whatever. Shock. Rain Dance slows a bit more. Cool. Storm Call, base damage increased by 50 at all ranks. So I like that they're targeting Storm Call, because I think that is the weak point of his kit, surprisingly enough. But I don't think this is the right solution. It's an okay solution, but I think the right solution is make his ultimate do full damage regardless of whether he threw his axe or not. Because the big problem with Shock is that his rotation, his ability to rotate around his ultimate, like use the rest of his abilities, is really limited, because his ultimate being as effective as possible is dependent on him having his throwing axe available. So that creates a very large window, about 8 seconds before and after him ulting, about what abilities he can use during those periods. So moving on, Freya, 1 second extra on Pulse. Cool. Freya's been kind of underwhelming, I think, lately, because Kronos is getting online really early because Doom Orb, which is an item that Freya can't really build because it doesn't fit into her itemization as well, because she doesn't scale immensely with power. She mostly scales from attack speed. There's Soul, who has really dominant early game and still has incredible burst damage late game, and then there's all these late game hunters like Artemis, Shibalonk, and stuff who are having really good laning phases due to throwing daggers. So Freya's just kind of bleh. She's not bad, she's just kind of bleh. So this should help her a bit. This is going to help her laning phase. This is going to give her a longer period of her very high damage output. So yeah, I think I'm okay with this change. Although I do think that Freya's being a little bit undervalued right now. This seems like a good change. Kukulkan, just a slight bug fix where the amount of power he gets from mana as his passive isn't modified by Rod of Tahuti's 25% power modifier. So basically this means full build, Kukulkan gets about 20 power extra. Nemesis, so I'm going to rant a little bit about this one, but we'll talk about it. Scales of Fate, power gain and loss increased to 6% from 4%. Cool. And her ult increased to 50% protection steal at all ranks. That's actually really big, but I'm still not happy with where Nemesis is. Not that I'm not saying they need to buff her ult more or anything at all, because her ult is already, I think, one of the best ults in the game. My complaint is that she's basically turned to Odin, where she's like an ult bot. Hyra seems to think she's like this late game hyper carry solo who runs through your entire team and just kills everyone, but she's not. Her job is to ult someone so the rest of her team can destroy them, because on her own she doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, because her ability, she only has one damaging ability aside from her ultimate, and it does barely any damage. Her jump she doesn't have a jump to go over wall, she has a medium range dash. And her shield, her only form of survivability is a 2-second shield that can be removed instantly with any sort of hard CC. Disarm, silence, root, cripple. I think cripple? I don't know about cripple. Knock up, what have you. So she has to build tanky, and if she builds tanky, she does no damage, because Her abilities, her base damage is shit. Her abilities don't do very much damage. Her abilities don't have very much scaling, and so she's basically like designed to do her damage with auto attacks, but she can't build to do auto attacks because she's doesn't have the tools needed like Akali or something. So I think what Nemesis needs is either, if Hi-Rez really wants her to be this late game hyper carry character that just shreds through people, they need to give her a good auto attack chain to really take advantage of Chin Size and Fatalis, for example. So that means give her like, instead of 1-1, 0.75, 1.25, give it like 0.75, 1, 0.51 or something like that, right? Something that just is a bit quicker overall on average, so bring the average attack speed or the average hit time below 1x so that Chin Size really pays off, and then make her shield not removed by hard CC so that she actually has some reliable survivability, and then she'd be a strong hyper carry. Alternatively, acknowledge that she's, wake up and smell the coffee and realize she's not this, hyper carry that just goes out and solos people with ease because she can't really build to do that, and buff the damage of her only damaging ability. That's it. That's my Nemesis rant. I don't want her to just be an ult bot with a game-breaking ultimate that you have to pick her for when the rest of her kit is underwhelming. That's not what I want from her, or any god really. I think that's the kind of shitty design. Raijin is seeing some nice quality of life changes. So his 1 travels a bit quicker, cool. Fix an issue where this ability would not stop upon being silent. So I think this means that you can right-click to cancel Percussive Storm early, which is actually really huge, because that was one of his biggest downsides, is once he started casting this, you could just all in on him and he couldn't do anything about it until it was done channeling. He was like, yo, fuck you guys, I'm gonna finish this beat off. Thunder Crash, his teleport, it's not interruptible anymore, so that's actually really huge, so you can't stop him from getting away with stuns and whatnot. Taiko Drums, his ultimate, lasts 50% longer, and he moves a little bit quicker in it, so he's a little bit more, his ultimate's a little bit more useful, it gives him a little bit more flexibility. So I think these are all good changes. However, I also think this is going to put him into like top 2 mage territory. I think this is going to make him better, or just about on par, maybe slightly worse than Isis. Giannis is still up there, but I think this is going to make Raijin in need of a nerf. But then they can specifically target, like, just tweak basic numbers. Tweak the damage of Raiju or the duration of Raiju, or tweak the damage of his ultimate, right? Right now, the problem is his kit feels very clunky and limiting in ways that are very awkward and shouldn't be limiting. He shouldn't be stuck into channeling his entire spell, because no other character in the game gets like stuck channeling, abilities that they can't cancel, right? So these are good changes, but he'll probably need his damage nerfed or something, because I feel like this is going to make him extremely, extremely powerful. Robin, increased radius on his ultimate. Cool. I'm fine with that. Scotty, reduced the damage of Calder by 10%. I think the only problem with Scotty, I think her sustained damage is fine, and Calder's sustained damage is fine. You can kill the thing in 5 hits, or like 2.5 hits if you're ROM. I think the problem with this stupid dog is that when she uses her 1, which is already a high scaling ability that can clear wave just fine, when she uses that, which slows you on top of doing good damage, then Calder's next 2 attacks, basically, because I think it's like a 3-second window, he does 100% increased damage. He does double damage. He basically crits you twice, so he can hit you for like 500 damage on his dash after you already got hit for like 350 by the spear throw ability. Like, the problem is just the burst damage combo of Calder following her piercing cold ability. That's it. The sustained damage was fine, I think, but whatever. Vimana. Interesting change. I'm not sure it was necessary, but I guess it's okay. So Vimana's probably a little, like, he's doing very well in Season 3, and he's probably on the upper end of the spectrum for Warriors. So this is a pretty drastic change, I think, but because the base damage is pretty high, I don't know, this might be okay. So Armored Umbrella, his 2, his big cone ability, 70% power scaling instead of 100, so it's a 30% reduction. And then Umbrella Ring, his little boomerang thing, the power scaling has gone up by 10% per hit. So a little bit more rewarding to hit the double taps and stuff, but overall this is the nerf for Vimana. I just think it's going to hurt a little bit much because you're reducing the scaling on his easily confirmable damage by 30%. Now this isn't going to increase the overall damage of the ability by 30%, because most of the damage is base damage, but still, this is pretty noticeable, and this is probably going to hurt him significantly. Moving on, Jing Tian, they gave him back his root, and somehow he's still worse than before. So Furious Roar, not much has changed. It now lasts 1 second longer, but it does 1% less health per second, so the overall dot damage is the same. But the base damage has gone up by 20. Hook Slam has his root back again, hooray, whatever. But then his ultimate, the wind-up time is nearly twice as long. It's over half a second longer. So here's the thing, right? So Jing Tian basically broke solo lane. He was the top pick. He was considered like the strongest god in the game during the fall split, right? But even during that time, he wasn't considered a very good support, because you could, after the first like 2 nerfs or whatever, like the first like couple patches following his release, they nerfed his ultimate and stuff and his damage a little bit and whatever, but like his ultimate was really easy to avoid, because not only do you have like 3 seconds while he's spinning around to just beads or get Geb shielded or whatever, but you also have time during the windup because of this like 0.72 second windup time. You had time to walk out of range of it, or jump out of range of it, or dash out of range of it, right? Like, it was really easy to avoid his ultimate. And outside of that, he doesn't really have supporty abilities. Like his 1, yeah, it reduces damage, it does, but realistically, in a team fight, you're not just like, that's not how a fight unfolds, right? Like, it's not like, oh man, we just turned this fight around because their ADC did 50% less damage for 4 seconds. Like, realistically, Jing Tian goes on the ADC, then the team's fight's going to reposition a bit, and they're going to collapse on Jing or defend their carry or whatever. Like, that's just not how it works. Furious Roar was being used to deal like 25% of someone's health with 1 use, because the dot does 12% of their max health, and then it did, I think it originally did like 240 base damage before Season 3. So, on a carry who has base health on most characters, not the tanky characters, just like the hunters, assassins, mages, base health on them is like in the neighborhood of 1900. So 260 is already like that's over 10% of their health. That's like almost math is hard right now. It's like 12.5% of their health, right? And then you add a flat 12% from the dot, and that's like, you're basically doing 20-25% of their max health. Just from 1 instant cast ability. And then Hook Slam did like 300 damage total. So you were basically taking an ADC to like 40% health as a Guardian. But his supportive abilities sucked. You know, his Hook Slam, has a smaller radius than Athena Taunts and, you know, Ymir Freeze and all this stuff. And his ultimate was super easy to avoid. So it's like, he basically broke the game because his damage was really high while he was so... he's basically this insane magical bruiser. He had this really good damage output while he was super survivable. You know, he had a never-ending health potion with his passive. He built full tank. And because of this percent max health damage, he just, you know, instant killed anything, right? So he was basically just fucking unreal in solo lane, but he was still shit in solo. Or shit in support. And then now they're saying they want to bring back some of his strengths and shit. But they've once again increased his damage a little bit, which isn't which isn't like his weakness. His biggest weakness was his fucking ultimate, which is so easy to avoid, and they nerfed that. He's even worse at support than he already was. I don't understand this change at all. I really don't. But that's all the changes in the Smite patch notes. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave your own thoughts and opinions and criticisms and everything in the comments below. I'm happy to discuss all of these changes and god balances and item changes and jungle changes and everything. Thank you for watching, and like I said, I'll try and get Susanoo gameplay tomorrow. And yeah, take care, have a good one. See ya.